Shocking historical factoid.
The remains of a cable car after a US Marine Corps aircraft flying too low and against regulations in order for the pilots to have fun and take videos of the scenery cut the cable that was supporting it to the aerial lift. 20 people were killed.
Those Marines should still be in prison. They are the lion being recorded for his roar to be heard at the beginning of NGM films. His name was Jackie. Circa 1928.
Coincidentally, NGM posted 2 new job openings the very next day.
Atomic Annie fires a 200-atom artillery-fired atomic projectile called Grable as part of the wider Operation Upshot Knothole nuclear tests. It was the first artillery-delivered nuclear projectile. Photo taken on May 25, 1953.
Well, that's one settlement no longer in need of assistance.
First Lady Rosalind Carter poses with John Wayne Gacy at a private reception in downtown Chicago in 1978. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy killed 33 young men and boys after having with them. He is one of America's worst serial killers.
Unemployed young men protest harsh and inhumane conditions in hostels and shelters. Wellington House, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, 1935.
St. Louis and sledding down Art Hill in Forest Park, St. Louis, Missouri, 1930s.
View of an unidentified civil rights marcher in a cloud of tear gas at the base of the Edmund Pettus Bridge during the first Summit to Montgomery March on 7 March 1965. In all, 17 marchers were hospitalized and 50 more injured. The day became known as Bloody Sunday.
Taken by Hugo Yeager, Genuine Color. Here soldiers having a snowball fight as they await deployment. France, 1944. Publicity still of John Singleton, director of Boys in the Hood. At the age of 24, he became the youngest ever nominee for the Oscar for Best Director, a record he holds to this day. 1991.
Hot dog stand in North End, Boston, 1937.
Women railway workers, 1918.
Finnish troops evacuate a wounded Soviet soldier across a stream, summer 1944. Source Azakiva.
Habitat 67, a modular housing complex at the Expo 67 World's Fair in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, 1967. Designed by Israel-Canadian architect Moshe Safdie, Habitat 67 is used as a housing complex to this day.
A Japanese samurai in full armor with sword, 1867.
The first Sikh temple to open in America, Stockton, California, 1915.
King Victor Emmanuel Roman II of Italy with his mistress Rosa Versolana and their 2 children, call 1865.
Victor's boy, they just stared through my soul back into the wall behind me.
A Royal Air Force pilot getting a haircut and a break between missions during the Battle of Britain, 1940.
What's he reading?
Polish powers captured during the invasion. Genuine Color taken by Hugo Yeager. 1939.
Can you see me?
Sydney Opera House under construction in 1966.
Master Monty was a St. Louis Air Force pilot who defected to Nazi Germany and joined the Waffen-SS. After the war, he initially managed to conceal his defection. But minutes after being honourably discharged, he was arrested for treason. Monty was arraigned while still in uniform, 1948.
Brennan Farmhouse, West 84th Street and Broadway, New York City, MI today, 1879.
Anyone have an owl picture?
The shortest, tallest and fattest man of Europe playing a game of cards, 1913 colorized.
August Bunsen Bean.
A man from France tastes Coca-Cola in the 1950s for the first time, Paris, 1915.
Roman S.C. Ozakowski, a 13-year-old boy who was shot by Polish People's Army during 1956 prison protests. Circa 1956.
Hitler, Bormann and others at the 1938 Nuremberg Rally, original colour picture by Hugo Yeager.
March 5, 1953, the 600-foot-long, 70-foot wide Marine Angel tranced to the Chicago River. The freighter had only 7 inches of clearance on each side of Van Buren Street and was the largest ship to ply the river.
Francis Ecjecki, Polish pilot who escaped Soviet-controlled Poland to Danish island of Bornholm in his Mikoyan Gurevich Majiminiz 15 on 5 March 1953, coincidentally the date of Stalin's death. He was the first person to present a MiG-15 to the Americans. US, 1953. Thanks for the MyG, dude.
A Quebec independence supporter during the 1980 independence referendum in which the proposal to pursue secession from Canada was defeated by a large margin. Montreal, May 1980.
Wabiak luck stop at a Polish railway car at the Zakopane train station with snow-covered mountains in the background. Poland, sea. 1936.
It is an awesome Polish band too.
Nelson Mandela and Muhammad Ali meet, November 2000. Ali was a friend and personal hero of Mandela, who kept a photo of him on his office desk.
A group of Canadian activists bound Alaska to protest an American nuclear test in the area. This is widely regarded as the beginning of the environmental group Greenpeace. Vancouver, British Columbia, Sep 1971.
A French soldier shows his monkey pit while a French photographer shows his puppy. Battle of the Vosges 1944.
Finnish soldiers crossing the Murmansk Railway 20.10, 1941.
The Normandy Cinema in Paris advertising Leni Riefenstahl's Olympia, c. 1938.
Women at the counter of a drugstore speak to the pharmacist.
Aerial photograph taken by a US plane of a Japanese Fugo balloon bomb in flight over the continental United States. On May 5, 1945, 6 civilians were killed in Bly, Oregon, becoming the only fatalities from Axis action in the continental US during the war.
Israeli woman of the Kibbutz Mabarak community on guard shooting from the Israeli Defense Forces in northeast Israel with her binoculars and a Uzi submachine gun, c. 1950s. I'm guessing it's a photo. Uzis were used as trench clearing weapons, not for guard duty.
A Victorian woman posing with teacups on her.
No thank you. I'm a coffee man myself.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. And have a wonderful day.
Transport of pipe segments used in the construction of Libya's massive irrigation project, the Great Man-Made River Sea. 1980s.
A photo of Abdul Wali, an Afghan farmer. In 2003, he was falsely accused of being a terrorist. Hoping to clear his name, he turned himself into the Americans. A CIA contractor would brutally torture Wali to death over the course of 3 days, beating him until he begged for death.
https://wiki/org/wiki/death of Abdul Wali.
Burning Allied ships after German air raid on Italian Bari. 28 ships sunk, 1,000 crewmen killed. One of the ships was secretly transporting a parrot, which covered the harbour. Since none of the crewmen survived, the medics on the ground didn't know what they're dealing with. 2.12, 1943.
The funeral of Adolf Wagner, Gauleiter of Upper Austria Bavaria at Munich Ehrentenpell. Hitler attended the funeral. Noticed the camouflage nets on the buildings to protect it from Allied air raids. Original colour picture taken by Hugo Yeager.
Sergeant and Mrs. Dennison Wed and Pete Entry's Lassie George Hoddle Jr. read the headlines announcing the death of Joseph Stalin at a newsstand in Times Square. His heart stopped beating, the Moscow radio announced.
An elderly woman and her grandchild wander among the debris of their wrecked home in the aftermath of an air raid by a US plane. Korean War, 1915.
1900, 6 young children supervised by 2 men work in a bottle factory in Chicago 1092x896.
A group of Havana schoolboys in 1937. The boy with the lollipop was Fidel Castro.
Stunned Soviet officers examine a large pile of human ashes in front of Majdanek concentration camp near Lublin, Poland. The camp was liberated by the Red Army in 1944.
1973, a salesman demonstrates the Vitamix blender at Michigan State Fair.
March 5, 1953, the 600-foot-long, 70-foot-wide Marina Angel transited the Chicago River. The freighter had only 7 inches of clearance on each side of Van Buren Street and was the largest ship to ply the river.
Hitler inspects the model of Linz, his hometown, at the studio architect Hermann Giesler in Munich. Picture taken by Walter Frenz, Hitler's personal photographer.
SkyTrain, the new rapid transit of Metro Vancouver, arrives at the Expo 86 Centre. Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, 1986.
Jimmy Carter stands between Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin during the 1978 Camp David conference, at which Egypt and Israel agreed to end 30 years of hot and cold war between the two nations.
Carter has revealed over his long life such goodness and integrity.
Thousands of workers leave a ship out after work. In the background, the Titanic can be seen under construction. Circa early 1911.
A Canadian workman inspects munitions to be used by the British, 1942.
Every man on the front line is 50 behind him doing stuff like this.
Soviet Marshal Georgy Konstantinovich Yukov, 1960. Destroy Nazi Germany, win valuable prizes. Future Presidents Bill Clinton and George Bush with Alabama Governor George Wallace at a barbecue in 1983. Wallace was infamous as a vocal proponent of racial segregation and even tried to contest the Democratic Party primaries to become a presidential candidate 3 times.
It's a big club. Tilda George Carlin.
Eva Men's looking to get an autograph from Alyssa Milano at Mullen, California. 1989.
How neat. Thank you for this.
Bombed out Staniewski Circus building in Warsaw, Poland after German air raid. It was never rebuilt and no trace remains of it. Poland, September 1939.
King Omichoi of Italy with his son Victor Emmanuel Roman III and his daughter-in-law Lena Petrovic of Montenegro during a hiking trip in the Alps, late 1890s.
Kinda crowded in the Alps.
An American soldier comforts a fellow infantryman whose close friend had just been killed in action, Haktan-My area, Korea, August 1915.
The Ukrainians' nationalist abuse a Jew during the Lviv pogrom in July 1941.
Arnold Schwarzenegger with cigar and beer during the filming of Red Heat 1988, in which he played the Soviet policeman Ivan Danko.
Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau appears behind Princess Margaret during a May 7, 1977 picture session at Buckingham Palace, London.
Around this time in 1944, Tallinn was bombarded by Soviet bombers, 700 perished, and 20,000 were left homeless. Many sought refuge in Western countries, such as Sweden. Colorized image.
An Austro-Hungarian soldier descends into the city of ice underneath the Marmolata/Marmolada Glacier, World War I, 1916.
Crowded transport ship bringing American troops back to New York Harbor after V-Day, 1945. RMS Queen Elizabeth.
Soviet military personnel look at the remains of cosmonaut Vladimir Komarev's body after a manned spaceship crash, 1967.
Dredged Grand Surrey Canal, full of rubbish linking Rotherhithe and Camberwell, England, South London. Thames River, United Kingdom. It once ran through Burgess Park and was partly filled in by the 1970s. Photographs C. 1960.
Looks like it had been partially filled in long before that.
Princess Chun, mother of Puyi, the last emperor of China, early 1900s.
Taken in 1945. The atomic bomb, Little Boy, in a sunken loading pit just before being loaded into the B-29 that dropped it over Hiroshima. 140,000 plus death toll. Wu Lee, the last Prince of Korea, who was forced by Japan to serve as a lieutenant colonel in the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II and was killed during the Hiroshima bombing along with over 30,000 Korean slaves taken to Japan.
Koreans were fascist Japan's first victim.
Photo from the first Congress of the European Parliamentary Union, held in 1947 in Gstaad, Switzerland. The aim was to draft a European constitution. The creation of the Council of Europe resulted in a loss of influence for the EPU. Photo, Swiss National Museum.
A young Iranian communist holding two books about the Russian Revolution in her hands, one titled History of the Russian Revolution and the other is titled Young Lenin. Tehran, 1979.
A Manday on the Canadian side and a main state trooper on the S side of the border at an official ceremony commemorating the joining of the pipeline of an oil tanker terminal in Portland with refineries in Montreal. August 1941.
The picture was taken at Muhammad Ali's training camp in Pennsylvania and shows the legendary fighter with Tiger Smalls, a young boxer who achieved some notoriety. Mid-1970.
Homeless brother and sister search empty cans for morsels of food and try to keep warm beside a small fire at a railroad yard during the Korean War. Circa 1950. War is hell.
French President François Mitterrand decorates a wounded legionnaire of the 6th Reg Paris, France, 1988.
Where were they fighting?
Rhodesian women as they were interviewing soldiers of the Rhodesian Light Infantry for a radio station during the Bush War fought against the Zimbabwe Revolutionary Communist Forces, c. 1970s.
Wilt Chamberlain at 17. Standing at 7 FD1 in 2.16 until he played in the National Basketball Association for 14 years and is widely regarded as one of the greatest players in the sport's history.
Wonder what his stride length was.
Shigeru Miyamoto, creator of Mario and other characters in video games for Nintendo, plays Super Mario World on a Nintendo Super NES. Mario Day is celebrated on March 10.
Benito Mussolini riding a motorcycle, 1925.
A group of guys and gals gather around a Ford Mustang on the beach.
Women protest in Tehran, Iran. March 8, 1979.